should one person be the absolute expert in ASO and all the mechanics of it, and then the other person is more of a copywriter and a project manager? I was absolutely resisting. He really didn't want to change the icon because of the brand impact.
There's quite a lot right now with ASO, I'll give you that. Especially if you're a founder of a company, that's your baby, right? Your business is your baby. It's like, okay, this is our icon, we're very precious about it, we're not touching it.
Welcome to Let's Talk Ads. We're here to push your growth marketing tips, fun and chats. Tune in, let's rock the show.
Welcome to Let's Talk Ads. My name is Andre. I'm the founder of Apple Media, and I'm interviewing really interesting people every now and then about all things marketing. Today, I've got Anton from Freeletics with me. But Anton, maybe you want to give a quick intro yourself. What's the elevator pitch?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. So I'm Anton. I am a growth marketing manager in Freeletics and a freelance consultant. I got into ASO industry about, I want to say 7 or 8 years ago. Started working on the vendor side in a company called Metrics, then moved to Berlin to work in the agency. And now, I'm working in-house in Freeletics, which is a very exciting fitness app. So if you want to, give it a try, give it a try. And I'm also consulting on the side sometimes. So very excited to be here. Very exciting to discuss some ASO with you. Let's see how it goes.
Well, the topic today is triple N, myths, metrics, and mess. What 90% get wrong about ASO. So I'm really looking forward to this session. Anton, you mentioned you're also available as a freelance consultant for ASO. Can you share a little bit what's your availability? How do you usually help people with which topics?
100%. So it's a bit of a side hustle when I have some free time and free capacity outside of my full-time job. I usually work with companies on their ASO. Usually it starts with an audit. I'm looking into their performance, seeing, what their growth opportunities are, how we can prioritize them. And then if the company is happy with the audit, we can start doing that sort of hands-on. Plus, I'm doing some mentoring on the side or just answering some questions as a consultant. So it does not necessarily have to be a full-on engagement. It can just be like a consulting session, a workshop. It depends really. I'm trying to be flexible. I'm trying to adjust to meet the client where they are. So that's pretty much what I do. It's not like I do that like super actively. Again, I have a full-time job, but when I can, I'm happy to help some companies as well.
Okay, cool. You mentioned Freeletics. For the audience who don't know Freeletics yet, it's mostly high intensity interval training, if I'm not mistaken. Do you have like maybe for the audience a little coupon or anything to share?
I don't have a coupon, unfortunately, but one thing to say, I think Freeletics started out as a sort of high intensity, pretty hardcore workout app, and that's what it got known for early on. Right now, Freeletics is just a fitness app, which is very much suitable for pretty much any goal. We have a lot of training journeys in the app. You can lose weight, you can build muscle, you can recover, whatever you want to do. So it's a great app. If you're not into high intensity training, you'll probably find something there as well. We recently announced a very exciting partnership with Decathlon, so we'll be kind of trying to integrate more of their stuff into our app and vice versa. So the app it's been developing in very exciting ways over the past years, and I'm pretty sure that everybody can find something for themselves there, even though, yes, we hear very often that like, hey, Freeletics is about, like Nike, like intense, like very muscular kind of, you just have this brand around it. But I would say that view on that brand is a little outdated. Like we're more than just
Got
high
it.
intensity training now.
It
Yeah,
became more an app for everyone who just wants to stay in shape in some way, right? So
100%. It's still for athletes who are like, who know what they want to do, but also for people
Mhm,
who are maybe just getting into training and want to be
mhm,
healthier. So there's something
understand.
for everybody.
Understand. What was one of the bigger challenges you faced early on, and how did that shape your approach to ASO for Freeletics?
So if we're talking about Freeletics specifically, I think I joined the company at a point where They were not actively doing ASO for a little while. There was a person doing ASO before me, but then there was like a gap. And the first thing I had to do was to really just take a step back, and try to look at the big picture. Like, I did the audit, as I just said, like, as I sometimes do that for people I work with as a consultant, or like we used to do that back when I was working in the agency. I just kind of laid out everything we have in the app, all of our product pages, metadata, uh, keywords, our KPIs, our competitors. I just try to see, like, okay, what are we doing well? What are we maybe, like, were we lacking? What can we improve? What our competitors look like? So I just started from that, and then we started actively A/B testing. We started doing aligning ASO with Apple search ads more closely, doing way more custom product pages and custom store listings. And one of the things we started doing, which was not really done before, is actively creating in-app events and promotional content on Google Play, or in-app events on the App Store, and pitching those for featurings. So that was also one of the growth levers, which was pretty interesting. And to this day, sometimes if we have an exciting update or a big marketing campaign, we're trying to pitch that, we're trying to promote that within app events, and we see pretty, pretty positive effect from that. So I'm pretty happy with those actions.
Interesting. There's a lot of, let's say, when I think of ASO from the very early stages, there was really not much to do, really, from my perspective, at least as a performance marketer. But nowadays, what you mentioned with all those new features that the app stores are coming up with, where do you see you can have the biggest impact? Where should I focus on if I get into app store optimization for my app?
Right. Well, so I think it depends on where your app is, like, in the life cycle. If you've never done ASO for your app and you're just getting into it, I think you can just cover the basics and see pretty good results. Do keyword optimization initially, apply keywords in secondary localizations is something a lot of people are doing and finding success. By secondary localizations, we mean that on iOS, especially if your target market is US, you can actually use other markets which might not necessarily be your target markets, like I think in like Arabic or Russian or Chinese, Korean. There is a pretty big number of them. You can also use their metadata fields to put your keywords, and they'll be indexed in the US. So you can kind of expand the space for your metadata. So that is pretty nice, starting with some A/B testing or just conversion rate optimization in general. If you're a small app and you're just getting into ASO, you probably will not have enough traffic to A/B test reliably. So you can just apply stuff, see whether or not it works, maybe roll back to the original version if it doesn't, or just keep iterating. That is something to do. We know that user ratings, star rating, and user reviews are extremely important for conversion rate. And also, I think algorithms treat them as a signal for whether or not an app is high quality. So making sure that your rating is high is very important. But at that stage, it goes from just pure ASO more into like the product as well, because then we're talking about optimizing your in-app rating prompt, making sure that in-app rating prompt triggers at the right moment within an app. So I would say if you're just getting into it, those three things would be nice, Do your keyword optimization and be pretty active with it as you start out. Do conversion rate optimization. You don't need to be extremely creative from the start, You can use some AI to figure out what are the best practices and like start iterating based on that. And then ratings and reviews. Like, make sure that the app is high quality, the users are leaving positive ratings, and that your rating is above like 4.2, 4.3. So those would be the basics. And then as the app grows, then you can get into more, I would say, like more in the weeds of ASO. You can start doing in-app events, custom product pages. If you're spending a lot on paid UA, of course, it makes sense to align your product page with the traffic source. So custom product pages, custom store listings come into play. And then, yeah, there's quite a lot right now with ASO. I'll give you that. Like, I agree that over the past 2 to 3 years, there's been some very positive, pretty exciting changes in ASO. And yeah, definitely introduced way more interesting tools for ASO managers to work with.
Follow-up question here, because it sounds like a lot of work, to be honest, especially when I maybe have to manage multiple countries, multiple languages. From an entrepreneurial perspective, how many resources should I be ready to invest into this? Do you think it makes sense to hire one full-time person, two full-time people? What should those people maybe be different in terms of skill set? Should one person be the absolute expert in ASO and all the mechanics of it, and then the other person is maybe more of a copywriter and a project manager? How would you structure this?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I guess, yeah, let's just try to think about that on the fly. So this is essentially like a resource problem. Like, what can you afford? If you can afford hiring an ASO team, I guess do that, a person who knows ASO really well in depth, maybe a junior who can do like keyword optimization and more just like, hands-on smaller tasks, and then a creative team and a data analytics team to support them. That would be like a wonderful, dream scenario. Of course, most companies probably don't have resources for that. Now, what I just described is basically the setup in the agency, right? When I used to work in the agency, that's exactly what we had. Like when a client came to us, that would be a team of like 2 to 3 ASO people, depending on the client size. We'll have designers helping us with screenshots. We'll have copywriters helping us with the copy. We'll have the localization team. We'll have the data analytics team helping us with audits and more advanced analytics. So that is like a perfect scenario. Now, if you're like an entrepreneur, if it's a smaller company and you just want to make sure that you do like the necessary minimum, then I would say, either if you can afford to hire a person full-time, you can try to hire a person full-time. In that case, I would suggest that you look for somebody who's good in ASO, but also maybe in Apple search ads, in some other UA channels, so that, that person could cover more bases for, if you're an indie founder, if you're a small company, that is very valuable. Another way to go could be to work with an external consultant like me, or there's plenty of others, to work with a person who can just come from the outside and help you understand what your priorities are. Of course, ASO is big, right? There's keyword optimization, conversion optimization, ratings and reviews, analytics, featuring, localization. There's just like so much stuff you can technically do. However, within those, some things will have more impact than others. For a lot of apps, doing keyword optimization does not necessarily make sense. Imagine you are Amazon. I would bet most of the people come from the brand, So whatever keyword optimization you'll do for generic keywords will not really move the needle too much. However, maybe conversion optimization will be very important for them, or localization will be very important for them. Like, okay, Amazon, everybody knows, but like, what if we go in Germany and like localize the listing specifically to that market and bring up the conversion rate by like 1 to 2 percentage points? For Amazon, that might have huge difference. For another app, if it's like an indie app, yeah, then for them, maybe like doing some keyword optimization is extremely valuable. Doing that on Google Play specifically, if that's where they did not do that, but iOS does well. All that, I'm just saying I guess what I'm trying to get at is get a person who can tell you what your priorities are in terms of like how much the certain action can like impact your business positively, and then just focus on that priority. And for that, you don't really need a big team. You might work with somebody external or hire a person, or in some cases, you might already have a person in the team who's like taking care of Apple search ads or has some background in SEO, though I'm against the viewpoint that SEO and ASO are the same thing. They're not, but some skills are transferable. Maybe that person can like step up and start doing ASO. So there's many ways to go about that, but yeah, that's like the lay of the land. It's a pretty big spectrum, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, good thoughts. given that you've seen so many different accounts and different sizes of clients and teams, what is like the typical, or let's say the most overlooked element of app store optimization of an ad listing? And why do you think some people just don't know about it or ignore it at all?
Yeah. So the most overlooked ones, I would say there's a few. So one is often the app icon. Now, everybody usually knows that the app icon is very important, right? However,
Yeah, exactly. So it was
in
my thought. Like everyone looks at the
yeah,
icon first. No?
why I'm saying I think it's overlooked is overlooked from like the testing optimization standpoint. A lot of companies put so much, like they're so careful about the icon that they never touch it. So they created an icon once, it became a part of their branding guidelines, and they just never want to optimize it ever again. It's like, okay, this is our icon, we're very precious about it, we're not touching it. However, A/B testing that icon, introducing some small changes to it. One of the tests I like to run is for apps which are like bigger brands, where the brand name is established and a lot of traffic comes from branded search, is to put their brand name like right into the icon. So like literally show it instead of the little brand mark, like write the name right there. Thinking behind that test is when somebody comes from branded search, those people, they're not really in the mood for like using an app. They just want to make sure that like this is the app they're looking for. If somebody's searching for Uber, they're not about to download Lyft. They want to download Uber. They just need to know like which one is it, like where is the real app they're looking for. So adding that brand name into the icon sometimes really helps people to establish that connection quicker and increases conversion rate. So that is one. Another one might be video. A lot of companies don't do videos. It is pretty complicated to make a video. It's pretty expensive to do. And it's also pretty risky. Like you need to put up a lot of resources upfront to make it. And then very often the video actually does not increase your conversion rate.
That's what I've
So
seen. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So sometimes it does, especially I would say for apps which have an exciting UI maybe or mechanics. Videos work very well for games, for example. In those kinds of scenarios, I think you have like a higher chance of success. In many others, you don't. The point is like not too many companies even test the video. So if you can afford to do that, that might be an interesting test to run. Yeah, I would say maybe, I don't know, like ratings or reviews are very important. Companies, I think, again, in general, probably understand that rating is important, but they don't really monitor that actively and they don't try to optimize that actively. So thinking about where your rating prompt triggers inside the app, or if you have a lot of negative reviews, the fact that you can actually reply to those reviews and the data shows that if you reply to negative reviews, people come back and increase their star rating on average, and that impacts like your total star rating. That is a very important piece of like sort of optimization puzzle you can do, but not a lot of companies do that.
Like, this was ever measured? Like how often people come back to increase their rating? Is there any statistics around it? Do you know that?
Yeah, so you cannot measure that on the App Store natively. Maybe some tools do that. But on Google Play, you can literally go into your Google Play console, into the ratings and reviews tab, and it shows you two charts. There's basically like a bar chart on top. It's negative ratings without replies, and on the bottom, it's negative ratings with replies. And in my case, I think pretty much for every app, I look at that chart. The one where like with replies to reviews, the average rating is higher because people tend to come back. So it's not like anecdotal evidence. You can literally go into your product page, into your Google Play console analytics, and see that specifically for your app. And yeah, in all of the cases I've done that, it's a pretty clear evidence that yeah, you need to reply to ratings, to negative reviews, and people tend to come back. They won't change it from like 1 star to 5 stars. That's unrealistic, but they might change it from like 1 star to 2 stars, 1 star to 3 stars, and that really moves the needle on average. So that's very helpful.
Makes sense. Thanks for sharing. Where should this monitoring and the moderation sit? Is it something that apps routine should manage, or is it rather something on the product side of things? Is it maybe even customer service? Where do you see that?
Yeah, so I think ideally, of course, like if you have a solid ASO team or the person who's like mid or senior ASO expert and they know what they're doing, ideally it should sit with them because then they can basically share that expertise with others and they can be the point of contact for like the product team, the customer success team, whoever that might be. They can basically initiate those conversations everywhere and they can be the central hub for that sort of everything App Store related. I think that just works very well when you just have like one team or one person where like anything App Store related, we just go to them, they help us. In our case, for example, in Freeletics, some of that actually also sits with the customer success team. Even before I joined, the customer success team was looking into our ratings, replying to reviews. So they were already doing that without actually any input from the ASO team. That also works. It's just that while the customer success team might know how to reply to user reviews and sort of manage that part, they might not have enough expertise to go ahead and like analyze the full impact on the conversion rate, on the App Store performance, and like further on. So they just don't have the full picture. So I would say ideally, yeah. Ideally, you want everything App Store related to sit with the ASO team or ASO person. Exactly. So sometimes it does, especially I would say for apps which are like, which have an exciting UI maybe or mechanics. Videos work very well for games,
Got
for
it.
example.
When
In those
we
kinds of
look at
scenarios,
the,
I
when we
think you
go
have
back
like
to
a
the
higher
title
chance
of
of
this
success. In
show,
many others, you don't.
myth,
The
metrics,
point
and
is
math,
like not too many companies even test the video.
major
So if you can afford to
myths
do
in
that,
ASO
that
that
might be
you
an
would
interesting
like
testing room.
to bust. Is there anything that comes to your mind?
Yeah, good question. I think one would be that, and I see that very often, especially with companies who come to me to work as a consultant. One myth I'd like to bust or address is that ASO is like a pure organic growth channel. So a lot of companies, they're like, okay, we need to grow organically, so you need to do ASO. And the reality is that even though ASO, indeed, like if you're doing ASO, you are in charge of organic search and keyword optimization. But ASO is extremely interdependent with pretty much any other channel, right? If you're doing paid UA, if you're doing PR, social media, all of that traffic ends up on the product page. And it actually impacts how algorithms rank you organically as well. You know, there is numerous evidence and examples from people posting about that on LinkedIn, about the fact that, for example, whenever your like UAC spend goes up or down, it actually impacts your search metrics, not just like referral traffic, but also just organic search. So the algorithms seem to be looking not just at whether or not you're targeting a keyword, but like whether or not your app, what's the velocity of downloads, how many downloads are we getting from which traffic sources, etc. So this is like, I'm not sure if it's a myth or is it just like a misunderstanding of how ASO works in 2025. ASO, while being in charge of organic things like search, keyword optimization, and conversion rate optimization, anything we do in ASO is heavily impacted by other traffic sources. And that is, on one hand, a big opportunity for companies who do, for example, a lot of paid UA. If you're spending like 200K a month on meta ads, but you've never done custom product pages, it might actually be a pretty big unlock. If you increase your conversion rate on the product page, then obviously up the funnel, it should have very positive effects on your kind of ad efficiency as well. So that might be a big unlock, but at the same time, it's like a bit of a curse for ASO experts where if your goal is to increase, if the company says like, okay, we need to increase downloads by 10%, and we want to do that by search optimization, it's like, okay, but what is the traffic mix? Like, what are we doing on other channels? if you want to increase your search downloads by 10%, but like the rest is dropping, it will of course cause a drop in organic KPIs as well. So all of that has to be aligned. And at a minimum, I think it would be very helpful for people to start looking at ASO as this more, essentially as a discipline, which kind of sits at this place in the funnel, which is heavily impacted by all of the traffic coming from any source. Everybody ends up on the product page, no matter where they come from. So that would be one thing, I think.
Makes sense. When we look at the practical work of testing new icons, screenshots, other things, do you have a certain testing approach that you can recommend to other people to get around with ASO?
Testing approach, yeah. So first of all, you need to know what is your basically like, okay, let's look at your amount of impressions and downloads per week, per month. To run a successful A/B test, you need a pretty big sample size. If you start an A/B test on either Google Play Experiments or App Store product page optimization, they actually have those like little estimates saying that to reach 90% confidence, you will need X amount of weeks or X amount of downloads. So it already gives you an impression of like, okay, do we have a large enough sample size? So number one, you need to understand if running reliable A/B tests is even realistic for your app. For a lot of apps, even established apps like Freeletics or others in many other categories, actually running a reliable A/B test is a bit of a problem because the app itself is like pretty large. We have a lot of users, but you're A/B testing on the market level. You're A/B testing in Germany, in Italy, in France, in Spain, and in the market where you are testing, you might actually not really have that many downloads, right? So you will not be able to run a reliable test within a few weeks. It will stretch out into like months. And if your A/B test runs for like a few months, it just becomes not effective. Like I would not trust a test like that. So first, understand like, okay, how are we A/B testing? Are we running A/B tests inside those tools, or should we just apply stuff? Basically do like a before and after test. Apply stuff to the store, see whether or not it works, and then decide to either go back or continue iterating. That approach is riskier, obviously, because you're not A/B testing. You're just applying the new set of screenshots or new icon right away. However, it's also way more reliable. And if you're a smaller company, you probably have larger risk tolerance. So you can kind of afford to do those things, right? If you're Uber or Walmart or HBO Max, you probably cannot just rebrand your icon and like release it. It's too much risk. But if you're a smaller one, if you have like a game, you can probably do that. So that is number one. Number two, just be aware of the basics, like make sure to run your test for a minimum of 7 days, usually, to cover the weekly seasonality. A lot of apps have that. For example, for a fitness industry, like more people download fitness apps from like Friday to Monday, and then like Tuesday to Thursday, it's a bit of a drop. So 7 days minimum. Yeah.
I remember you mentioned icon testing. Sorry to interrupt here. I just remember a scenario that I had with one of my clients where we basically had icon testing and try something completely different from what's there in terms of an icon, and it was a game. And I was absolutely resisting. He really didn't want to change the icon because of the brand impact. Like he was warned. We wouldn't recognize his brand anymore. But on the other side, looking from the outside into it, he just up his own brand. The market share was way too small to actually be a brand from my perspective. So sometimes if people, founders of apps, have a too big idea of what they actually are and how big they are, and do they risk too much or not? So here, what I felt was like this founder in particular should have been more bold and should take a higher risk in that context. Have you seen similar things as a consultant?
I have, of course, a lot of, especially if you're a founder of a company, you care, like that's your baby, right? Your business is your baby. You
Exactly.
care
Yeah.
a lot. You overthink it. You know your brand. You know what it means for you. You kind of project that to the rest of the world. And as I said, like with the icons, a lot of companies are very precious about that asset. Now, there is one way to put like a number on your brand and see whether or not it's actually true that your brand is as important as you think it is. What I'm usually doing in my audit is a very simple exercise. You get your client or your app's brand name, right? And then you know your competitors. For example, let's say in our case, we are Freeletics, a fitness app, and our competitors might be apps like Nike Training Club or Adidas Running, Strava, whatever that might be. You can go on any ASO tool and look at the search volume for that brand keyword. So, what is the search volume for Freeletics, Strava, Adidas Running, whatever that might be? It's basically the same you can also do on like Google Trends if you want like a bigger sample size. And then you kind of lay them out and compare. And very often, in some markets, your brand name is actually very well known. Freeletics is a very well known brand, especially in DACH, but also like across Europe. It's maybe less well known in the US. But for that founder you're talking about, it would be interesting to compare, for example, his game with some other bigger brand name games in the category and just show the data to say like, hey, for your competitors or like some of the competitors, the search volume is above 50. And for us, it's around like 10 to 15. So even though we understand how important the brand is in the long run, right now it's actually pretty small. And we think we'll gain more in terms of just like business, I don't know, revenues, user acquisition. We'll gain way more by optimizing your icon and just getting in more users than by keeping that icon, which you think represents the brand, which it probably does, but so far we're just not at the place where the market really cares about it too much, right?
What could be the risk here? To be honest, like for existing users that are maybe whale users in a game contest, do they not already involve this student? Is that the risk? Is that something you have seen when you did icon tests?
No, honestly, I've never seen that. Like, and quite frankly, as an ASO expert, I'm basically optimizing for downloads, right? We want to optimize conversion rate. So I'm not really looking deeper into like, okay, but how do people then open the app when it's already on the phone? I guess you can make an argument that, yeah, by like optimizing the icon, even though it increases your conversion rate, it might like decrease the open rate on the device, but like it feels a little stretched. Like, I don't know, it just does not feel, I'm not convinced by that argument. I would say the risk is, if you're a big brand, the risk is large because if, they're just, people might start posting about that on social media. Do you remember when Airbnb rebranded?
Not too long ago, no?
Well, it was a while ago, but basically they had like, I don't remember what their logo was before, but it was like Airbnb. And then they updated it to this like A sort of thing, which now everybody knows Airbnb for, but it wasn't their brand before. And a lot of people freaked out about it. And there was like, a lot of people were saying that they cannot recognize Airbnb. I just remember there was like a wave of people not liking it. I guess that's the risk. But then even Airbnb, they stuck at it, and now there's their brand. It works fine.
I
So
mean, they do recognize it, right? So
you recognize
otherwise,
it.
otherwise they wouldn't complain.
Yes. I mean, I have to say, I'm not like a brand expert. So probably somebody who works in branding, like, might make an argument for why that's risky. And I would agree that it's riskier for brands which are already recognizable. They have a brand recognition to them. There's name recognition. There's a lot of traffic coming from those branded keywords. But for a startup or even for a mid-sized company, I think in most cases, founders or just marketing teams inside of those companies, they really overthink how important that brand actually is. And in most cases, the risk is smaller than than it is in reality. So it's always a conversation. And at some point, at some point it might actually be the situation where the brand team just says no, like it's not aligned with who we are. It's not aligned with our vision. And you have to respect that position as an ASO expert. You're not a branding expert at the end of the day, you're ASO expert. You can make your arguments as to like why you think it still makes sense. But at some point, it's always a conversation. And if the team says no, then you just have to work with what you have and respect their opinion as well. So it depends. For an indie, for like indie games, indie apps, smaller ones, I would say the risk is non-existent almost. You can just focus on getting more users. It's way more important at that stage.
I for the missed opportunity, to be honest. But there's so many more questions I have. When we think about localization, is it always worth the language and base? So assuming you have a business that is international, right? So not like food delivery that is operating only in Portugal, or so you don't need to 12 languages. But let's say with a typical subscription app, fitness, like Freeletics, is it always worth translating into every language, or wherever you put this threshold, like when should I make the decision to invest into translation?
Yeah. So I would say in general, if you're an international business, if you're especially operating in Europe and your target markets are Poland, Netherlands, Germany, France, Italy, Spain, Portugal, I don't know, Sweden, it is important to localize. As much as we, working in tech, we are used to the fact that everything is in English. Real people who are like real users of your app, I think it makes sense for somebody in Sweden to download an app that's in Swedish. So that it definitely makes sense. It is important. Now, there are degrees to which you can do localization. You can kind of split them into maybe two or like three levels. So one would be degree number one, you just translate your stuff. You just have your default product page, which it might be in English, and you just translate it into your target languages. That is actually honestly pretty simple to do. Like you can literally do that in a day with like AI, or you can use the localization team. There's multiple ways to do that. Translate your product page. Try to also translate the UI within the screenshots. It's usually weird when like the caption is in German, but the UI is in English. You want to make sure that the app is in the local language for the local user. The second stage would be maybe like, okay, if you're, again, let's use Freeletics as an example. We can look into our analytics and see like, okay, in Germany, people prefer the muscle gain training journey. But in Netherlands, people prefer running or high intensity training journey, right? And so we can actually show those things within the screenshots as well. So we're not just translating, we're actually adopting the content within the screenshots to the local audience based on the analytics. And then layer number 3, if we go really, really in depth, it's what we call, it's not even localization anymore, it's called like culturalization, where you basically do like a cultural analysis of like what are the design preferences and language preferences and trends in a specific market. Let's say we operate in Germany, US, and Brazil. I would assume that a lot of things which people might, I don't know, some colors or visual design trends in Germany would be different from what people are used to or gravitate towards in Brazil. So this is like a very deep localization, I guess. So now that we understand, like, okay, you can just do simple one, or you can do like really, really in-depth one. I would say for majority of apps, just translating their product page into a local language is enough. And then you just A/B test based on the market, and you kind of apply what works on the market level. If you are a larger brand, if you are somebody who's like, well, again, let's use Amazon as an example. It's just the first thing that comes to mind. For them, any incremental increase in conversion rate will amount to a large increase in downloads and a large increase in revenue. So for them, it actually makes sense. So they might actually do this full-on like localization, culturalization research and A/B test based on that, and do like small incremental changes to their product pages, and they will actually see, pretty substantial, hopefully we'll see pretty substantial increase in conversion rate, which will be fair for them. For like 80 to 90% of the companies, I would say, again, it's a very long answer to your question. First, yes, localization makes sense. And two, just start with translating your UI and your captions, your product page elements. That would be enough. Then, of course, like it also depends on what kind of app you are. Let's say you are like a food delivery app or a travel app, for example. Let's say you're Airbnb. A very simple thing to do would be to look into like, okay, if we're in Japan, like where do people go from Japan? Like what is I remember this interesting case study. Maybe Feature actually has like a blog post about it, or we've shown that at a conference where it's a dumb way to approach it. But imagine like you're a travel app and you're in Japan. Your natural instinct in a lot of cases would be for a Japanese app to show like a Japanese landmark. Makes sense, right? The app is in Japan. We show this beautiful Japanese house. It must relate to them. But why would it relate to Japanese people? Japanese people probably don't travel to Japan. They travel to other places. So instead of that, it actually makes sense for that market to look into analytics and see like, okay, where do people from Japan love to travel the most? And let's show them that. Maybe like Japanese people love to travel to, I don't know, Paris or Barcelona. Showing those landmarks, those cities within the product page on the screenshots might actually improve conversion rate by way more, simply because it's way more aligned with the expectations of like what people will actually be doing in your app. So you might also think about it from the perspective of like what kind of app you have. If it's a game, it's probably less relevant. If it's an app, yeah, you can like play with that as well. So yeah, localization is a pretty big thing. I would definitely suggest to do that.
Yeah, okay, cool. Thanks, Anton. This is a very whole, extremely nice talk. Where do people find you usually? You're in Berlin, no? Germany. Let's say for a personal copy, if they want to invite you, donate a beer or something, then
Yeah, I'm in Berlin. I travel sometimes, but it's Berlin.
Okay. All right, cool. Anton, thank you very much for sharing all those insights. To the audience, if you have comments, hi. We are here to help you guys. So reach out or put it just in the comments of this YouTube video, wherever you listen to us. Thanks for joining.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
We're here to boost your growth, marketing tips, fun and chat.